This one's finished.
Hey guys, in this video we're going to work on modifying some base model AK-74Ms. I've put together an effective budget build, a strong close quarters weapon for clearing maps like Factory or the Customs Dorms, and a nice all-rounder that I enjoy running on larger maps like Reserve. The AK family and attachments for them is vast in Tarkov, so while we won't cover every single mod available, we'll touch on some other honorable mentions and get you guys on track to feeling comfortable experimenting with some builds of your own, as well as go over the ammo available to make sure you're set up for success in Raid. Just a reminder, I do stream Tarkov 4 nights a week on Twitch, link in the description below. Now, one really cool thing about the AK-74M is how accessible this weapon has become. Prapor level 3 sells them for about 37,000 rubles. You can craft them at your workbench in your hideout, and once you reach level 10 and gain access to the flea market, you can actually buy them for far less than even Prapor sells AKs for, partly because so many players are crafting these and flooding the market, which is great for us as the 74M is an incredibly versatile weapon. Let's jump into that budget build. Starting with the base model 74M, I also picked up a Zenit RK3 AK pistol grip. Now this is actually the pistol grip I use on all my AKs right now, as I feel it's the best value for the ergonomics benefit you get. So this one will cost you about 8,000 to 9,000 rubles on the flea market. It gives you plus 13 ergonomics as opposed to the plus 6 that comes on the grip with the gun. Next we bought the Polymer AK-100 Series 4 grip. Now this is only going to cost you a little over 1,000 rubles, and this is just a very cheap way to get a foregrip and a tactical device of your choice onto the weapon. I also bought a Tacticatula TT01 rear sight weaver adapter. If you just type TT01 on the flea market, this will come up. This is actually going to replace the rear sight in the middle of our weapon, which gives you a little rail on top so you can put your reflex sight of choice. For me, that's the Belomo PK06, but if you have a different reflex sight already in your stash or just prefer something different, you could pretty much fit any of the smaller reflex sights on top of this thing. Now for the budget build, we're going to keep the stock that comes on this AK, which will give us 37% recoil and 2 ergonomics, but we're going to add a recoil pad from GP25 to it. So this little recoil pad will give you 5% recoil reduction and 1 ergonomics benefit, and they're super cheap, maybe like 3,000 rubles on the flea market. Now with this polymer handguard, you can put your foregrip of choice. For me, I'd recommend the black RVG grip from Magpul. This has a good balance of recoil and ergonomics benefit, and the cost isn't too bad. I think these are running about 15k right now. If you've already got something in your stash that you just want to throw on, that's fine too. Now for budget compensators, I'd recommend either the SRVV or the DTK1. Both of these are only about 4,000 or 5,000 rubles on the flea market. They're both relatively the same. The DTK1 will give you 7% off your recoil, whereas the SRVV will give you 8% at the cost of 1 ergonomics. So it's really up to you. Whichever one you can get first, or whichever one you think looks cooler is fine. Now for modding, we'll just remove the old muzzle brake, pistol grip, rear sight, and we'll take off the old handguard, but make sure you leave the gas block on. So pull it from the handguard down here, otherwise you're going to pull the gas block off as well and the gun won't work. Just slap on the new pistol grip, the new polymer handguard, the rear sight adapter, and that'll get a sight right on top. We'll get the recoil pad, whatever foregrip you wanted to use, and whichever of the compensators. And you're pretty much good to go as is. Now with some optional upgrades, you could spend another couple thousand rubles on a charging handle, the RP1 from Zenit. This will give you an extra 1 point of ergonomics. That'll actually just kind of slap on top of the old charging handle right here. Now if you want to put a tactical device on it, there is one slot on the side of the handguard we bought. From skier level 1, you could buy a tactical blue laser. I'd recommend that if you just want something cheap, but if you have like a flashlight or something in your stash already, you could use that too. Lasers are nice because they actually lower the recoil of your point shooting in this game. So that means when you're not aiming down your sights and your laser is on, your recoil will actually be a little bit better. Let me show you what I mean. While the first few shots jumped up toward the neck level, you can see some tight grouping at center mass. Now let's try again with the laser turned off. See the wider grouping there? If this guy were a bit further away, many of these would be arm shots instead of center mass, which could greatly reduce time to kill. Now, as an honorable mention, if you're not level 10 yet and don't have access to the flea market and you really want to get a reflex sight on your gun, instead of using the TTO1, you could go to skier level 1 and buy an Ultimac M1B gas tube. This is going to give you just a different kind of handguard in the front, so you won't be able to use a laser or a foregrip, but you'll at least be able to put a little reflex sight on the front of your weapon. To get that on, you actually take your old entire gas tube off and put this in its place. If you prefer a ranged option instead of a reflex scope, you can actually just stick any of the PSO scopes on there. So if you've already got one of these, any of them will work. I prefer the 1M2-1 because I like the chevron in the middle a little bit more. But any of them will just click right on. On that note, if you want to get really fancy with this M1B gas block and the PSO scope on here, you could actually, in the front of your gun, you could actually put on an NC Star MPR45 backup mount, and that'll make your reflex sight angled instead, and you can actually switch between the two. Let's move on to our close quarters build, which we've practically converted into an LMG. Now for this, I picked up an RK3 pistol grip again. This is about 9,000 rubles on the flea market for 13 ergonomics, super worth it. And again, I went with the TTO1 rear sight adapter and PKO6, but again, any small reflex sight of choice will fit on there. For a muzzle brake, I went with the PWS CQB74. Now this thing is going to give you 11% off your recoil, and you lose 1 ergonomics. But this is super worth it. We're going to be full autoing with a huge magazine here. We really want the best recoil benefit we can get. Now it may be overkill, but I went with a 95 round drum. It's kind of just for fun and definitely minimizes the reloading. A more practical option would probably be the 60 round magazine. These actually both cost about the same on the flea market. They're both about 20k rubles. The 95 round drum has a huge ergonomics hit, which is partly why. And you also have to run a rig that has a 4-slot sectional, so you can actually reload this effectively. So I think that's why a lot of people prefer the 60 rounder. But in either case, I would definitely go with at least the 60 round magazine so you can be ready to take down some squads. For a handguard, I went with the red hexagon. This one, believe it or not, has a little bit better ergonomics than the other colors, so I didn't just choose it because it looks cool, although it does have that added benefit. But that plus 15 ergonomics is super helpful because we do lose quite a bit of ergonomics with these giant magazines, and we also get 3% recoil. Now with this build, we're going to remove the buttstock and put on an RPK 16 buffer tube. This will give us another 4% recoil, and it'll allow us to put the MOE stock on. This guy will give us another 35% recoil and 7 ergonomics. And then on the back of the buttstock, we could put a rubber butt pad from Magpul, which will give us another 3% recoil and 1 more ergonomics. Now for foregrips, I went with the RK2 simply because it had the most recoil benefit at 5%, although we do lose 2 ergonomics. There are a lot of other great options out there though. There's a lot of good balanced ones such as the Fortis Shift Grip, which will give you 2% recoil but add 11 ergonomics rather than losing some. So it's really up to your preference there. And to get a foregrip onto the red hexagon here, you need a medium length rail for hexagon. And then to get any tactical device onto the hexagon rail, you need the short length rail for hexagon. So to find these, when you have your rail, just right click it, hit link search. And you'll be able to see all the little things that link into it. That way you don't have to remember all the names of these tiny little adapters. And then like the last build, we did spend the extra couple thousand rubles for the Zenit RP1 charge handle to give us 1 more ergonomic. Now as an optional buy, you could pick up the Fab Defense PDC dust cover and put this in place of the dust cover that comes with the 74M. This will give you 7 ergonomics and 1 more point to accuracy. The dust cover that's on the AK already gives you 5 ergonomics, so you're really only getting 2 ergonomics and 1 accuracy out of this, and this dust cover costs about 22,000 rubles. However, it does give you a giant rail on top to put different sights on if you wanted a longer range sight. For modding, we're going to remove the old muzzle brake, pistol grip, rear sight, buttstock, magazine, and handguard. So you're really just left with the weapon with a dust cover on it and the gas block. We'll put on the new pistol grip, sight, compensator. Got our little hexagon rail. Attach these guys, stick them right on. Get our gas tube, put the rubber butt pad on the stock, charge handle, and then your magazine of choice. Good to go. This may not be the most ergonomic gun out there, but it's excellent at close quarters and makes a pretty good LMG for squads, especially with 57 vertical recoil. Now for our all-rounder build, again I went with an RK3 pistol grip, 13 ergonomics for 9,000 rubles, really can't beat it. We have a 45-degree backup mount, so it's from NC Star. This is gonna let us put our little reflex sight on the front of the gun so we can kind of switch to it from our long range option. Now to get a scope on there more easily, you're going to want to swap out the dust cover for one that has a rail on it. The Bastion dust cover is your cheapest option. This will still have +5 ergonomics like the one that's already on it, but we lose 2 accuracy, so it's a little worse. If you want to pay a little more money, you can get the Fab Defense dust cover, and this will give you 7 ergonomics and +1 accuracy instead. For a scope, this is the one we used in the intro. It's a nice clean kind of cross view. This is the Valde PS320. This will be a 1x by 6x. Similar to the hexagon handguard in the last build, we actually have a VS24 white handguard. This one is actually a gas block combo, so we actually have to take off the handguard and the gas block to get this on. And it's got a bunch of key mod slots on it, so we'll need a Strike Industries 6-inch guide and a Strike Industries 4-inch guide to get our tactical device and foregrip on there. Now again, if you don't remember the names of those, just right-click your handguard and it'll show you all the things that can attach to it on the flea market. For foregrip, I went with the Fortis Shift Grip. This gives you 2% recoil and 11 ergonomics, so nice balance there. Again, we threw on a blue laser because they're only like 5,000 rubles from Skier, but if you have a tactical device that you prefer, anything will work. We have our RP1 charge handle again for that 1 extra ergonomic for only about 2,000 rubles. For a muzzle brake, because this is an all-rounder build and we're shooting at range, I wanted to go suppressed, so I picked up a TGP-A 545 muzzle brake suppressor. This thing seemed to have the least impact to your ergonomics at -8. A lot of the other 545 suppressors had an even worse penalty than that, and also has the added benefit of giving you 1% back to your recoil. For a stock, I went with the Zenit PT3 Classica stock. This is a nice little folding stock. It'll give you 45% to recoil and +10 ergonomics. And to get that onto the gun, we also need the AK-74/AK-100 PT lock. For modding, we're actually just going to take off everything, so you might as well just hit right-click disassemble, and we'll just add the parts onto this stripped AK here. Our dust cover, sight on there. This is our handguard and gas block. Attach the tactical device and the grip. Magazine, suppressor, charge handle. Got our little backup mount on there. And then the lock for the stock. And there you go. So this is a nice little all-round build. It's not the very best for ergonomics or recoil, but it's decent at both. We have a sight for long range. We have a canted sight for close range targets. We're suppressed so we can kind of stay at a quieter profile. Got a laser on it again for close range, and a nice big magazine so we can handle squads. Let's talk ammo, since this is a pretty crucial aspect, as damage and escape from Tarkov is entirely dependent on ammunition fired rather than the gun itself versus the armor, if any, on your target. For me, there are 4 options that are most viable, all of which are at the top of the chart. BT and BP have roughly the same stats, but you get a little more armor penetration with BT at the cost of using a tracer round, which makes them a bit less appealing for larger maps in my opinion, and definitely isn't something I would use with a suppressed weapon. BT and BP are your mid-tier choices though, as they'll deal with level 3 armor and below quite quickly and can handle level 4 armor, but will struggle with anything stronger. If you're really on a budget though, you could probably get away with running PP ammo, which is far cheaper and has just a little less armor penetration and damage than BP, but again will struggle against more heavily armored targets. Overall, BS and 7N39 Igolnik are your best options by far, which unfortunately also makes them the most expensive ammunition for 545. While 7N39 does have the most armor penetration, I would actually recommend BS over it, simply for that 40 flesh damage, which is a critical breakpoint for killing targets in the midsection, since you can deal 80 damage necessary to drop a target with 2 chest shots with BS ammo, rather than 3 for Igolnik. That said, with the introduction of the new Slick armor, which offers level 6 protection to the chest with great mobility, you may still want to use Igolnik instead if you expect to run into more geared PMCs. The AK-74M is incredibly versatile and can be modded for any situation, so I hope this guide will help you make the best of it. If you have any corrections or suggestions for future gun modding videos, feel free to let me know in the comments below. If you're enjoying these guides and would like to see more, consider subscribing to the channel for future content. Thanks for watching and stay safe out there.